He was erased from history, but 83 years later, one man returned with a secret from the Titanic so dangerous, powerful people tried to bury it again. What he revealed will change everything you think you know. In April 1912, the world stood still for a moment in history. The RMS Titanic, the largest and most luxurious ship ever built, was preparing to sail from Southampton to New York. Newspapers called it unsinkable. Wealthy elites filled its grand cabins, while hopeful immigrants crowded the lower decks, chasing dreams of a new life in America. Among the excitement, laughter, and flashing cameras, there was one man who moved quietly through the crowd, almost invisible. His name, according to the passenger list, was Joseph Carter. Joseph did not look like the other first-class passengers, nor did he fully blend in with those in third class. He dressed simply but neatly, wearing a dark coat and a hat pulled slightly low over his eyes. His posture was straight, his movements careful, as if he was constantly aware of being watched, or perhaps afraid of being seen at all. In a time when racial prejudice was deeply rooted in society, a black man traveling alone on a ship like the Titanic was unusual. People noticed him, but only for a moment. Then they looked away, dismissing him, placing him into a quiet corner of their minds where curiosity never turned into questions. That was exactly how Joseph wanted it. He spoke little during boarding. When a crew member checked his ticket, Joseph answered politely, his voice calm and measured. His accent was difficult to place, refined but not tied to one country. The ticket identified him as a translator, someone who worked with languages for business purposes. It was a respectable profession, one that required intelligence but did not invite too much attention. Still, there was something about him. A steward later recalled how Joseph carried no heavy luggage, just a single leather bag that never left his side. Even during meals, he kept it close, resting it near his feet or gripping it gently with one hand. It was not the behavior of a relaxed traveler. It was the behavior of someone guarding something important. On the first evening aboard the Titanic, passengers gathered in the grand dining hall. Crystal chandeliers glowed warmly above long tables filled with silverware and fine china. Laughter echoed across the room as wealthy guests shared stories and toasted to the journey ahead. Joseph was there, but not truly part of it. He sat alone at the edge of the room, eating slowly, his eyes scanning the space more than his plate. He noticed everything: the movement of waiters, the placement of doors, the patterns of the guards assigned to certain areas. To anyone watching, he might have seemed nervous or out of place. But Joseph was not nervous. He was focused. Later that night, while most passengers slept, Joseph stood on the open deck. The ocean stretched endlessly around him, black and silent under the cold night sky. The air was sharp, biting against his skin, but he did not move. A young couple passing by noticed him. "He's been standing there for quite some time," the woman whispered. "Maybe he just enjoys," woman whispered. "Maybe he just enjoys the view," the man replied. But Joseph wasn't looking at the ocean. He was thinking. Every step he had taken to reach this ship had been planned carefully. Every risk calculated. One mistake could cost him everything. Not just his life, but something far greater. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. Even in the dim light, his eyes scanned the handwritten notes quickly, as if memorizing them once again. Names, numbers, locations. Then, just as quickly, he folded it back and hid it away. No one saw. No one ever did. Over the next 2 days, Joseph remained a shadow among passengers. He avoided long conversations, gave short, polite answers when spoken to, and spent much of his time walking the ship alone. Crew members began to recognize him, not because he caused trouble, but because of how little he did. He did not gamble. He did not drink. He did not laugh loudly or join social gatherings. Instead, he observed. He learned the ship like a map, its hallways, staircases, and hidden corners. He noted which doors were locked, which were guarded, and which were left unprotected during certain hours. And always, that same leather bag stayed with him, tightly held, never opened in public. By the third night, whispers began among a few passengers. Who is he? Why is he alone all the time? Have you noticed how he watches everything? But whispers fade quickly in places filled with noise and distraction. The Titanic was a floating world of music, luxury, and celebration. No one had time to chase small mysteries. No one except Joseph, because while others saw a journey, Joseph saw something else entirely, a mission. And deep down, he knew something even more unsettling. This ship, praised as unsinkable, was carrying more than people and dreams. It was carrying secrets. And Joseph Carter had come aboard to find them. Long before the Titanic ever touched the waters of the Atlantic, Joseph Carter was living a very different life in London. The city was loud, crowded, and full of opportunity, but also full of shadows. It was the kind of place where powerful men made quiet deals behind closed doors, and where secrets could travel faster than truth. Joseph worked as a translator, a job that placed him in rooms most people would never enter. He spoke multiple languages fluently: English, French, and enough German to follow complex conversations. Wealthy businessmen hired him to assist during private meetings, trusting him to listen, translate, and forget. That was his role: to listen, but never remember; to hear, but never question. For years, Joseph did exactly that. He stayed invisible, blending into the background while men in expensive suits discussed trade routes, shipping contracts, and international deals. But over time, Joseph began to notice something strange. Some conversations didn't sound like business. They sounded like warnings. Late one evening, Joseph was called to a private townhouse in London. The job seemed routine: translate a meeting between two foreign investors and an English shipping agent. When he arrived, the atmosphere felt different. The room was dimly lit, the curtains drawn tightly shut, and the men inside spoke in low, careful voices. Joseph took his place quietly, standing near the edge of the room as the conversation began. At first, it was ordinary. Shipping routes, delivery schedules, payments. Then everything changed. One of the men lowered his voice and said something in French, something he clearly did not expect Joseph to fully understand. But Joseph understood every word. "The case will be on the ship," the man said. "No inspections. No records." Another man responded, this time in English. "And the documents inside, they remain sealed. No one opens it until we arrive in New York." Joseph kept his face still, his expression neutral. But inside, his thoughts raced. A case, hidden on a ship, protected from inspection. This was no ordinary cargo. The conversation continued, revealing pieces of something much bigger. The case, they said, contained documents, records of transactions that were never meant to be exposed. Illegal deals, names of powerful individuals, proof of operations that stretched across countries. Joseph realized he was standing in the middle of something dangerous, something that could ruin lives, or end them. When the meeting ended, Joseph left without saying a word. But for the first time in his life, he did not forget what he had heard. He couldn't. For days, the information stayed with him. He tried to ignore it, to return to his normal routine. But his mind kept returning to the same question. What happens if those documents disappear forever? The answer was simple. Nothing would change. The powerful would remain powerful. The truth would stay buried. Joseph had spent his life watching from the sidelines, hearing fragments of truth but never acting on them. But this felt different. This was not just another secret, it was proof. Proof that could expose everything. And then he learned something that changed everything. The ship carrying the case had a name: Titanic. It would depart in just a few days. That night, Joseph made a decision that would alter the course of his life forever. He would board that ship, not as a translator, not as a passenger seeking comfort or adventure, but as a man on a mission. Getting onto the Titanic was not easy. Tickets were expensive, especially on short notice. Passenger lists were carefully managed, and identities were checked during boarding. But Joseph was patient and careful. Using connections from his work, he managed to locate a ticket that had recently become available. The original buyer, a businessman, had canceled his trip at the last moment. The ticket was still valid, and it carried a name: Joseph Carter. Joseph took it. He memorized the details, adjusted his appearance slightly, and stepped into a new identity. It was a risk, but it was the only way. If he failed, he could be arrested, or worse. If he succeeded, he might uncover the truth hidden inside that mysterious case. The day of departure arrived quickly. The docks were filled with excitement, passengers saying goodbye to loved ones, workers rushing to complete final preparations. The Titanic stood tall above them all, a symbol of human achievement. Joseph stood among the crowd, his ticket in hand. For a brief moment, doubt entered his mind. Was this worth it? Was it worth risking everything for something he wasn't even sure he could find? Then he remembered the voices from that room in London, the quiet confidence of men who believed they were untouchable. And just like that, the doubt disappeared. Joseph stepped forward, one step closer to the ship, one step closer to the truth. As he boarded the Titanic, he kept his head down, moving with the flow of passengers. No one stopped him. No one questioned him. To everyone else, he was just another traveler. But Joseph knew better. Somewhere on this massive ship, hidden behind locked doors and guarded by silence, was a case that could change everything. And he was going to find it, no matter what it took. By the evening of April 14, 1912, the Titanic had settled into a calm rhythm. The excitement of departure had faded into routine. Passengers dined, laughed, and enjoyed the luxury around them, believing they were on the safest ship ever built. But Joseph Carter felt something different. For the past 3 days, he had done more than observe. He had learned. Every corridor, every staircase, every guarded door had been carefully noted in his mind. He knew when certain hallways were empty, when crew members changed shifts, and which areas of the ship were rarely visited. And most importantly, he had found it. The storage room, hidden deep in a restricted section of the ship, far below the polished decks and bright chandeliers. It wasn't heavily guarded, but it didn't need to be. Very few people even knew it existed. That's where the case was. Joseph had only seen it once, through a slightly open door 2 days earlier. A small black case, placed on a shelf, surrounded by crates. It looked ordinary, but he knew better. Since then, he had been waiting for the right moment. That moment came late that night. The temperature had dropped sharply, and most passengers had returned to their cabins. The deck was quieter than usual, with only a few people lingering under the cold stars. Joseph stood near the railing, his hands in his coat pockets, his eyes distant. Then it happened. A sudden, strange vibration ran through the ship. It was subtle, but unmistakable. Joseph looked up. A few seconds later, the ship slowed. Whispers began spreading across the deck. "Did you feel that? Was that something?" At first, no one seemed too worried. Some passengers even laughed, brushing it off as nothing serious. But Joseph didn't laugh. He had already turned away from the deck. Moving quickly, but not running, he made his way toward the lower levels of the ship. His heart beat faster with each step, not from panic, but from urgency. If something was wrong, this was his only chance. As he descended deeper into the ship, the atmosphere changed. The warmth and elegance of the upper decks faded into narrow hallways, dim lights, and the distant hum of machinery. A few crew members passed by, their expressions tense, their movements quicker than usual. Something was happening. Joseph reached the corridor leading to the storage room. It was empty. Too empty. He moved forward, his footsteps quiet against the floor. When he reached the door, he paused for a moment, listening. Nothing. Slowly, he pushed it open. The room was just as he remembered. Dark, silent, filled with crates and cargo. And there, on the shelf, the black case, untouched. Joseph stepped inside and closed the door behind him. His hands trembled slightly as he approached it. After everything, the risk, the waiting, it was finally within reach. He picked it up. It was heavier than he expected. Locked, of course. He quickly reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal tool he had prepared. He had practiced this moment in his mind countless times. Every movement had to be precise. Just as he began working on the lock, a sound, footsteps. Joseph froze. They were coming closer, slow, steady, not the rushed steps of a panicked passenger. Deliberate. The door creaked open. Joseph turned. A man stood in the doorway, tall, calm, wearing a dark coat. The same man from the meeting in London. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air felt heavy, like time itself had slowed. "I was wondering when someone would try," the man said quietly, stepping into the room. His voice was cold, controlled. "I just didn't expect it to be you." Joseph said nothing, but his grip on the case tightened. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a gun. "You heard too much in London," he continued. "We should have dealt with you then." Joseph's mind raced. The ship was already in trouble. He could feel it. The slight tilt beneath his feet, the distant noise of confusion spreading through the decks. Time was running out. For everyone. "I'm not leaving without this," Joseph said finally, his voice steady. The man smirked slightly. "You're not leaving at all." What happened next was fast. A sudden jolt shook the ship, stronger this time. Both men lost their balance for a split second. It was enough. Joseph moved. He lunged forward, knocking the gun aside as it fired. The sound echoed loudly in the small room. The bullet struck the wall. They struggled, the case slipping from Joseph's hands and crashing to the floor. The ship groaned around them, metal creaking as water began to invade its lower sections. The man regained control, shoving Joseph back hard.
"You don't understand what you're dealing with!"
he shouted. Joseph didn't respond. He grabbed the case and ran out of the room, into the corridor, toward the unknown. Behind him, the man followed. Above them, chaos was beginning to erupt. Passengers were waking, alarms spreading, fear taking hold. But deep below, in the hidden parts of the Titanic, a different battle had just begun. A fight not just for survival, but for the truth. And as the great ship slowly began its descent into history, Joseph Carter disappeared into its shadows, carrying the one secret that others were willing to kill for. For more than 8 decades, the name Joseph Carter existed only as a faint line in history, if it existed at all. There were no confirmed records of him among the survivors of the Titanic. No official documents listed him as rescued. No body was ever recovered bearing his name. To the world, Joseph Carter was just another forgotten passenger, lost in the freezing waters of the Atlantic on that tragic night in 1912. And over time, even that memory faded. Historians focused on the wealthy, the famous, and the dramatic stories of survival and loss. Entire books were written about the Titanic, yet Joseph's name was rarely, if ever, mentioned. If anyone had noticed him at all, they had long since passed away. The truth, it seemed, had sunk with the ship. Until 1995. It began quietly, in a small, aging newspaper office in New York City. The building itself was nearly forgotten, tucked between larger, modern structures. Inside, only a handful of journalists remained, working on local stories that rarely reached beyond the city. On a cold afternoon, the front door opened. An old man stepped inside. He moved slowly, leaning on a wooden cane. His face was deeply lined, his hair thin and white, his body fragile. But his eyes told a different story. They were sharp, alert, watching everything. He approached the front desk. "I'd like to speak to someone," he said. His voice was soft but steady. A young reporter, curious more than anything, agreed to meet him. They sat in a quiet corner of the office, away from the noise of typewriters and ringing phones. "What's this about?" the reporter asked. The old man placed a worn leather bag on the table, carefully, almost protectively. "My name," he said, "is Joseph Carter." The reporter blinked, unsure how to respond. The name meant nothing to him. I was on the Titanic. Silence filled the space between them. It was a bold claim, impossible even. "That ship sank in 1912, the reporter replied carefully. "You're saying you were there?" Joseph nodded slowly. "I was. At first." The reporter assumed it was a story, another elderly man chasing attention or lost in memory. But something felt different. Joseph wasn't trying to convince him with emotion or exaggeration. He was calm, certain. And then, without another word, Joseph opened the bag. Inside was a small black case. The same case. Time had worn its surface, but it was unmistakably old. The lock was still intact. The metal edges were slightly rusted, but it had survived. The reporter leaned forward, his skepticism fading into curiosity. "Where did you get this?" he asked. Joseph's answer came without hesitation. "From the Titanic." What followed was a story no one was prepared to hear. Joseph spoke slowly, carefully, as if each word had been held back for decades. He described the night of the sinking, not as it was told in history books, but as he had lived it. The chaos, the fear, the moment he took the case and ran. But then his story took a turn no one expected. "I didn't make it to a lifeboat," he said. The reporter frowned. "Then how did you survive?" Joseph looked down at his hands for a moment before answering. The ship was breaking apart. Water was everywhere. I knew I wouldn't reach the upper decks in time, so I went the other way. Instead of trying to escape with the crowd, Joseph had moved through the lower sections of the ship, searching for any possible way out. When the Titanic began to tilt, parts of its structure weakened, creating openings where there had been none before. "I found a way out," he said quietly, "not meant for passengers." He described forcing his way through a damaged section of the ship as icy water rushed in around him. The cold was unbearable, the darkness overwhelming. But he didn't let go of the case. Not even then. "I held onto a piece of debris," he continued. "Wood, part of the ship, I think. I don't remember how long I was in the water." Hours passed. Screams faded. The great ship disappeared beneath the surface, and Joseph was left alone in the freezing Atlantic. Then something strange happened. A ship appeared, not the Carpathia, the official rescue vessel, but another one, smaller, unmarked. "They saw me," Joseph said, "pulled me out." The reporter leaned in closer. "Who were they?" Joseph shook his head slowly. "I don't know. They didn't have names." According to Joseph, the crew of that ship treated him in silence. They gave him dry clothes, food, and a place to rest, but they asked no questions, and they expected none in return. They knew about the case. Joseph added, "That changed everything. Instead of reporting him as a survivor, They made a decision. They let him disappear. When we reached land, they told me one thing. Joseph said, "If you want to live, you were never here." And so, Joseph vanished. For decades, he lived in the shadows, moving from place to place, never staying too long. He never used his real name, never spoke about the Titanic, never opened the case, because he knew the truth. The men connected to it had power, and power didn't fade easily. "I waited," Joseph said, his voice quieter now. "I waited for them to be gone." The reporter sat back, overwhelmed. "Why now?" he asked. "Why come forward after all this time?" Joseph looked at the case, then back at the reporter. "Because silence," he said, "can be more dangerous than the truth." For the first time in 83 years, the secret had surfaced. And nothing would ever be the same again. The story spread faster than anyone expected. At first, it was just a small article in a local newspaper, an old man claiming to be a forgotten survivor of the Titanic. Most people ignored it. Others dismissed it as fiction. Another strange tale tied to a tragedy that had already been told 1,000 times. But then came the detail that changed everything: the case. A sealed, black case, said to have come directly from the Titanic itself. Within days, larger media outlets picked up the story. Journalists, historians, and investigators all wanted answers. Who was Joseph Carter? How had he survived? And most importantly, what was inside that case? Joseph refused to open it publicly at first. He insisted on controlled conditions, away from cameras and large crowds. "This isn't for spectacle," he said firmly. "This is evidence." Eventually, a small private meeting was arranged. A group of legal experts, historians, and investigators gathered in a secure room. The atmosphere was tense, heavy with anticipation. Some believed they were about to witness a historic discovery. Others expected nothing at all. Joseph sat quietly at the center of the room, the case placed in front of him on a wooden table. His hands rested gently on its surface, as if he had carried its weight for far longer than anyone could understand. "Once this is opened," he said, looking around the room, "there is no going back." No one spoke. He slowly removed a small key from his coat pocket, the same key he had kept hidden for 83 years. With careful precision, he inserted it into the lock. A soft click echoed in the silent room. The case was finally open. Inside, there were no jewels, no gold, no treasures in the traditional sense. Just papers, stacks of them. Old, fragile, but perfectly preserved. At first glance, they looked ordinary. Typed documents, handwritten notes, lists of names and numbers. But as the investigators began examining them, the mood in the room shifted. Confusion turned into shock. Shock turned into silence. The documents revealed detailed records of secret transactions, illegal trades conducted across continents. There were references to human trafficking, stolen resources, and hidden financial networks designed to move money without detection. Names appeared repeatedly. Names of powerful businessmen, names tied to political figures, names connected to families that, even in 1995, still held influence. One investigator leaned back in his chair, pale. This could ruin people," he whispered. Joseph said nothing. He had known that all along. The discovery triggered a chain reaction. Quiet investigations began almost immediately. Government agencies, legal teams, and private organizations all moved carefully, trying to verify the documents without drawing too much attention. But something strange started happening. Records began to disappear. Files went missing. Requests for further information were denied or delayed. It was as if someone, somewhere, was trying to bury the truth again. Behind closed doors, panic spread among those who understood the implications. If the information in the case became public, it wouldn't just expose individuals. It could damage entire systems of power that had existed for generations. The pressure grew quickly. Joseph was asked to give an official statement. He agreed, but only once. The room was small, no cameras, only a recorder placed on the table in front of him. He sat quietly, his frail hands folded together, his eyes calm but distant. "I was not meant to survive," he began. His voice was steady, but carried the weight of decades. "I was not meant to find that case, and I was certainly not meant to keep it." He paused for a moment. "But I did." He explained that for years, he had lived with a constant fear, not of death, but of being found. He knew the kind of people connected to those documents. He knew what they were capable of. "That's why I stayed silent," he said. "Not because I wanted to, but because I had to." The room remained completely still. "But silence has a cost," Joseph continued. "And eventually, that cost becomes too high." He looked directly at the recorder. "I didn't survive for myself," he said softly. "I survived so the truth could breathe." Those were his final recorded words. After that day, everything changed. Within a week, Joseph Carter disappeared. No one saw him leave. No one knew where he went. The small apartment where he had been staying was found empty. His belongings were gone. The leather bag he carried for decades, gone. Even the case had been removed for security reasons and was never publicly displayed again. Authorities claimed he had been placed under protection. Others believed something far darker had happened. No official statement ever confirmed the truth. Investigations tied to the documents quietly slowed down. Some cases were closed without explanation. Others vanished entirely from public record. It was as if the world had taken a deep breath and then chosen to forget. Again, years later, historians and researchers would debate the story of Joseph Carter. Some believed he was real, a man who carried one of the greatest untold secrets of the Titanic. Others dismissed it as an elaborate myth, built on fragments of truth and imagination. But there was one detail no one could fully explain. The documents. They had existed. They had been seen. And then they were gone. Just like Joseph. In the end, the Titanic was remembered as a tragic accident, a story of human error, bravery, and loss. But beneath that story, hidden in the shadows of history, another truth remained. The Titanic didn't just carry passengers. It carried secrets. And one man spent 83 years making sure those secrets would not stay buried forever. Even if the world chose not to listen.